It's a conflict that had been pushed from the headlines by the Arab Spring. Now the standoff between Israel and Hamas in the Gaza Strip has been reignited. But are Arab nations now more willing to speak up for the Palestinians? Or are they more concerned with their own political agendas? This is Inside Story. Hello there, welcome to the programme. I'm Shiulie Ghosh. Israel has been bombarding Gaza in response to rocket attacks from the coastal strip. The crisis escalated when Israel killed the leader of Hamas's military wing on Wednesday. Hamas has now launched hundreds of rockets from Gaza, one of them killing 3 Israelis. And Israeli airstrikes have killed dozens of Palestinians, many of them children. Arab leaders have denounced Israel's operation and called for a ceasefire. But on Sunday, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Israel was preparing to significantly expand the Gaza offensive. Well, the last time Israel launched a full-on assault on Gaza was 2008. But the political realities on the ground now are very different. The Arab Spring has brought revolution to countries across the region. Egypt, one of only 2 Arab countries to have a peace agreement with Israel, now has a new leadership formed from the Muslim Brotherhood, of which Hamas is an offshoot. Our correspondents have been following developments in Gaza City, Jerusalem and Cairo.
Egypt's role under President Mohamed Morsi is a completely different one than that which was under former President Hosni Mubarak during the 2008-2009 Israeli war on Gaza. Almost instantly, Morsi recalled his ambassador to Israel, he dispatched his prime minister to the Gaza Strip, and he's kept, most importantly and crucially, he's kept the border crossing with Gaza open. This is something that people see has been a huge shift to the policies under former President Mubarak, where many believed that Egypt was complicit in the besiegement of the 1.5 million people there, and also was giving a green light to Israel to continue its bombardment of the Gazans. We're yet to see a way out of this crisis. However, there are those who believe that the strong approach being taken by Cairo in terms of supporting those in Gaza will strengthen Cairo's own position in terms of demanding an end to Israel's assault on the besiegement of the Gaza Strip.
Recent visits to the Gaza Strip have highlighted just how much has changed since the 2008-2009 Israeli assault on the Gaza Strip. On Friday, Egypt's Prime Minister Hisham Khandil was here with a message of solidarity. He said that Egypt would not stand by while what he called Israeli aggression continued. And there was a similar message from Tunisia's foreign minister, who was here on Saturday. And then the announcement that in the next few days, an Arab League delegation was expected here in Gaza as well. This is all very different from the past, when Egypt, for example, came under severe criticism from the Palestinians for, in their opinion, colluding with Israel in the blockade on the Gaza Strip and keeping the Rafah border crossing virtually closed. Now they're talking about letting a lot more people through to seek medical treatment and so on. They're also talking about some kind of concerted Arab action to try and put pressure on Israel to stop its air assaults on Gaza.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has told his cabinet on Sunday that Israel is ready and prepared to expand the operation in Gaza. He didn't give any specifics, nor did he mention the possibility of a ground operation. Now, according to the Israelis, they are adamant about crippling and destroying the rocket launching capabilities in Gaza. Even though the Prime Minister said that they have managed to take out over 1,000 so-called terror targets, Israel may still feel that it hasn't fully accomplished that goal of crippling the rocket launching capabilities. Now, on the diplomatic level, there are international efforts to try to reach and broker a ceasefire between Israel and Gaza. The French foreign minister is in Israel on Sunday. He will be meeting with the foreign minister of Israel as well as Prime Minister Netanyahu to talk about the efforts. These meetings will be closed meetings, and as well we know that Tony Blair, the Middle East envoy to the quartet, will also be meeting with officials in Israel.
So, will the new political dynamic in the region translate into more tangible support for Gaza and the Palestinian cause? For more on this, I'm joined by today's guests. From London, Azzam Tamimi, author of Hamas, Unwritten Chapters and director of the Institute of Islamic Political Thought. And joining us on Skype from Alexandria, Mohammad Soudan, Foreign Relations Secretary for the Muslim Brotherhood's political wing, the Freedom and Justice Party. Gentlemen, welcome to the programme. Mohammad, let's start with you. Hosni Mubarak, of course, was accused of turning a blind eye during the war on Gaza back in 2008. And that is one thing that President Morsi does not want to be accused of doing.
Yeah, it's totally, I believe, totally different between the era of Mubarak and that event in 2008, 2009, and what happened after a few hours from starting this kind of fighting, attacking Gaza from the side of Israel. It's totally different. A lot of movements have been happening with the Presidential Foundation and also with the cabinet of Egypt, moving Dr. Hisham Khalid going to Gaza inside this kind of fire with a lot of delegations with him, and also the diplomatic movement from Dr. Morsi through the all the Arab League, and also for the sending a message calling the American President Mr. Obama, and also withdrew his ambassador in Tel Aviv and sending a message to summon the Israeli ambassador in Cairo and giving him a very strong message to Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel. I believe there's a lot of moments, a very big difference between the situation in 2008 and 2012. A very big difference.
OK, well, let's have a look at what Egypt's president has done, because Mr. Morsi has condemned Israel's aggression and responded with several diplomatic measures, including recalling his ambassador to Tel Aviv and opening the Rafah border crossing for wounded Gazans. Here's what he had to say.
If a ground invasion takes place, as Israelis are saying, this will have serious repercussions for the region. We'll never accept this, and neither will the free world.
Mohammed, is President Morsi in a difficult position, though? Because obviously, ideologically, he supports the Gazans, but technically, Egypt still has a peace agreement with Israel. So he has to walk this narrow path between domestic diplomacy and international diplomacy.
Anyway, the peace treaty between Egypt and Israel is calling for the stability for the region, for all the region. And what's happening now is instability for the region. Sinai is very close to Gaza, and then what they are doing now is just making chaos. This instability for all the region, and this is totally against the peace treaty between.
But Hamas is contributing to the instability of the region, isn't it? It keeps firing rockets.
They are defining themselves. Those people are in embargo for a lot of years, and they get attacking by Apache and F-16 and F-18. And what they're going to do? They have to define themselves. This is just and react, not act. They are not. I believe they should define themselves.
Let me bring Azzam in here, because Azzam has obviously written extensively on Hamas. Azzam, what kind of support is Hamas expecting from Egypt, and is it going to get it?
Well, I think Hamas is quite content with the Egyptian response so far. They've hailed the courage of President Morsi and his Prime Minister. His Prime Minister immediately went to Gaza. And now Egypt is a theater for meetings and for Arab senior officials and diplomats to see the best way of expressing solidarity with Hamas.
But it was before, wasn't it? Egypt's always tried to position itself as a mediator in this conflict between Israel and the Palestinians.
Yes, Egypt will always be an important player in this regard as a mediator, but Egypt in the past was not a friend of the Palestinians, was not a friend of Hamas. The Israelis had a friend in the presidential palace until a couple of years ago. And that president in the war that was waged against Gaza 4 years ago actually helped the Israelis and stood against the Palestinians, blaming the Palestinians rather than blaming the Israelis. And here I must beg to disagree with your intro when you said that the Israelis were bombarding Gaza in response to Hamas rockets. Actually, we have documented in every case it was the Israelis who breached the truce that existed between the two sides. It wasn't Hamas that started. It was always the Israelis who either assassinated somebody or made an incursion into Gaza, or tried to resolve a domestic problem at the expense of Gaza.
Let me ask you this. Why are Hamas carrying on with this, given that Israel now has the Iron Dome defence system in place, doesn't it? Which means that it's managing to intercept most of Hamas's rockets. And as Hamas and the whole of Gaza saw back in 2008, it cannot compete on a military level with Israel. Most of the casualties are Palestinians. Most of the casualties will continue to be Palestinians. So what does Hamas gain from this strategy?
Well, what else can Hamas do? If you are attacked in your own country, in your own home,
you can negotiate.
You're going to try and defend yourself.
Hamas refuses to negotiate with Israel. You could negotiate. That's something else that you could do.
That's not true. That's not true, by the way. That's not true. Hamas was always willing to enter into a truce arrangement with the Israelis. And just before Netanyahu decided to escalate with the assassination of Ahmad al-Ja'bari, there were efforts in Cairo in order to mediate a truce, in order to replace the truce that was breached by the Israelis. You see, Netanyahu waged this war for his own purposes, for his own domestic political objectives, and not because of anything else. So to accuse Hamas as if Hamas was the aggressor, Hamas is the victim. We, the Palestinians, have been the victims for so long, and it's about time that the world saw this for what it is.
Do you think that's an interesting question about how the world perceives Hamas? Do you think the world will perceive Hamas differently in the wake of the Arab Spring, in the wake of the mass calls for freedom of expression and the right to choose their political leaders and the right for freedom that we've seen in the region? Do you think that will make a difference to how Hamas are perceived?
I think it will make a difference to how Israel is perceived. BBC Sunday morning poll today shows that more than 54 to 55% of those who are polled consider that Israel is not justified in its action. And therefore we are seeing a shift in public opinion. As far as Hamas is concerned, you see, the problem here is that the European Union and the United States of America decided to put Hamas on the terrorism list under pressure from the Israelis. And this has all along been an obstacle to reaching some sort of a reasonable deal in the region. Hamas is the main actor. You cannot just ignore Hamas. Hamas is the ruler of Gaza today. Hamas enjoys the support of the majority of the Palestinian people.
Do you agree, Mohammed, that the way Israel is perceived and the way Hamas has been perceived will change because of the Arab Spring?
Before I answer this question, I just want to correct something. Just Brother Azzam just said that Egypt was before not friend to Palestinian. I want just to correct this, that the Egyptian people is always friends to the Palestinian, friends to all Arabs, but just the regime, the former regime.
Yeah, Azzam was referring to the government of Hosni Mubarak. On that subject, I mean, the people of Egypt, of course, were very vocal about wanting the war stopped back in 2008. It's interesting that the Muslim Brotherhood at the time was saying that they would abolish the peace treaty with Israel. Do you think the Muslim Brotherhood has remained true to its grassroots support?
Actually, the peace treaty between Egypt and Israel, it's international agreements. And as Dr. Morsi and the Presidential Foundation said before many times, that we respect it as far as they respect it. And but the just to attack Israel, attack Gaza, that this also is not belong to the peace treaty. as I just mentioned, and about just to start the channel for dialogue between Gaza or Hamas leaders and the Israeli side. It's very important, but we should put us an equal discussion, an equal dialogue. How come they attack them with huge rockets from Apache or from Phantom, F-16, and then they said, let's go and discuss what's going on, how we can see that we put you in a siege, we put you in embargo for many years, even in the coastal boards, in the cross with Egypt, in Rafah, whatever. They have a very, very big stress, and they put them in a very big stress, and then let's go and discuss this. No, they should treat them as a human being. They should
well, let's talk about the embargo, because that is something that a lot of Arab nations are talking about. Qatar, for example, is one of the countries taking the lead on the Gaza crisis, and Qatar's emir visited Gaza last month. He was the first head of state to do so since Hamas took control and the embargo was put in place. This is what he had to say.
The stance taken by the Arab countries following the Arab Spring revolutions is different. If we recall, in 2008, Egypt was not able to provide anything to the people of Gaza. Now, in the light of the new change, Egypt's prime minister pays a visit to Gaza. Tunisian foreign minister goes to Gaza. I headed to Gaza weeks ago. If there were no change, none could have happened. The situation is totally different now, and we should consider the way we deal with the situation in Gaza. Gaza has been besieged, and it's time to ask the Israelis to end this siege.
So, Mohammed, Qatar says Israel should end its siege. Is there now going to be more pressure on Israel to lift that blockade, do you think?
They should stop this kind of embargo, I believe. But not only with the pressure from Egypt or from the Arab League. Me, myself, I think that's my point of view, that the Arab League is doing not enough at all towards the Palestinian case, especially the embargo of our brothers in Gaza. They don't do enough. I think that they can use the weapon of oil.
What do you want them to do? What do you think Arab nations should be doing then?
Yeah, they can put more pressure using oil market or oil or money markets against the EU or against the United States, just to move more pressure against Israel to stop their
they could have done that back in 2007. Why didn't they do it then?
This is I don't know, it's something political. You know that United States now is all over the eastern side of the Arab countries, and there are a lot of benefits between the leaders over there, especially the Gulf area. But we hope that these leaders that attack, that carry again their responsibility, their duties against our brothers in Gaza, and see that. I think that they can do it. They can do it, but they don't want to do it because of a lot of pressure coming from the United States. But they can do the same thing. Here is some kind of transferring the benefits between United States and Gulf areas, especially the oil country. They can do it. I think that they can do it, but they don't want to do it.
Azzam, do you agree with that? I mean, the Arab League has always been a pretty divided organisation. Why haven't they done more to lift the siege on Gaza?
You see, it's the nature of the Arab League. The Arab League can only enact if there is a unanimous agreement, and you cannot get unanimity because the Arabs are always divided. And that's why today I tweeted and I wrote on Facebook that, in my opinion, we shouldn't wait for the Arab League. We shouldn't expect much out of the Arab League. Instead, we need to encourage the 5 or 6 members of the Arab League who agree together to form a new bloc. I would say Qatar, Egypt, Tunisia, Libya, maybe the Sudan as well, maybe to some extent Morocco, if that's acceptable to them. They should come together and form a bloc that is capable to work in harmony, and they should probably invite Turkey to join them in order to create a pressure, an interstate pressure group to make things happen and to effectively change things in the region.
Well, Azzam, one of the things that Israel is accusing Hamas of working with Iran, that these rocket attacks, the recent rocket attacks, are being influenced by Iran. Does the fact that there is a perception that Iran is active in Gaza and in this conflict with Israel, does that perhaps influence how much support Hamas might get from Arab nations?
Not at all. It doesn't really matter where Hamas gets those weapons from, although I heard from Hamas that many of their rockets are now locally manufactured. They have the technology and they have the material. And you know that Hamas and Iran are not on very good terms today. So bringing Iran into the argument by the Israelis is just irrelevant, and it doesn't make much sense. The reality is that if you are under attack, you are entitled to defend yourself and to obtain weaponry from wherever you can get them.
What about the US? Where does this leave the US? Because the US, of course, is saying that it supports Israel to the hilt. Also gives an awful lot of money to Egypt, doesn't it, in the form of military assistance and aid. It's something like nearly $3 billion. So what position is the US going to take on this if Arab nations band together behind Hamas?
Well, I think this is a major challenge for the United States of America and even some of its allies in Europe. The Arab world is changing. It's not the same world they dealt with before, and therefore they have to live with this reality. And they have to understand that these newly emerging regimes will have to harmonize their positions with the sentiments of their populations. And the populations in the region do not accept Israel, do not recognize Israel. They support Hamas, they support Palestinian rights, and therefore the Americans and the Europeans should not continue to hypocritically justify Israel's attacks on the Palestinians.
Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian president, says Israel only launched this offensive because they wanted to prevent the Palestinian bid for statehood at the UN. Is there anything to that, do you think, briefly?
Oh, that's ridiculous. I mean, well, it has nothing to do with it. I mean, this entire project by Abbas is irrelevant really to the Palestinians, to Gaza and to Hamas. He's just saying this to justify his position and his inaction. You see, had he at all sympathized with what's going on in Gaza, he should stop security coordination with the Israelis in the West Bank.
Okay.
He should allow Palestinian factions in the West Bank to act, and they are not acting because of him.
Okay, we're very short on time, so I want to direct the last question towards Mohammed. Clearly, President Morsi is hoping for a ceasefire. If the situation escalates, though, what is the president prepared to do?
I think that they are doing something together right now with the four people within Mr. Erdogan, Turkey, and the Prince of Qatar, and Mr. Khaled Elgindy. I think that they are meeting from yesterday. They put a plan for this. I think that they go first with a diplomatic agenda, and then I don't think that they go for any kind of military attack or something like this. But they should interfere the United States. They should come and bring them over here. There are a lot of benefits between Egypt and the United States, and Mr. Obama cannot just stay over there and watching what's going on in our region and support Israel from away. No, they should enter. I think they will call him to interfere with them here in our land. And we are waiting what they are doing together for people. And I really appreciate what Brother Azzam said, that now the Arab Spring is getting together and they're working, and they should invite most of the other Arab countries. They should do something for our brothers in Gaza.
Well, we know the Arab League is preparing to visit Gaza on Tuesday. We wait to see what happens with the situation. It's still a very tense situation. Thank you both very much indeed for joining us here on Inside Story. Mohammad Soudan joining us via Skype from Alexandria, and Azzam Tamimi in London. And thank you for joining us on this edition of Inside Story. Our coverage of Gaza, of course, continues on our news programmes and on our website, aljazeera.com. And if you want to send us your feedback, email us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. But from me, until next time, bye-bye for now.